your voice is going to sound like super silky, sweet, and beautiful. But again, welcome to the meeting.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the whole thing, as I was trying to explain to you earlier, this is my fun opportunity to get back with people who I got to meet
Yeah.
while I was open, but didn't necessarily have the opportunity to really give as much time as I wanted to be able to, right? To get to know a
Yeah.
little bit better, right? A lot of times when you're operating your business, you throw the character on and you give the glad hand, hey, how you doing? Shake the baby and off you go, right?
Yeah.
And then later on, you're like, man, I wish I got to know that person a little bit
Right.
better. And you're one of these guys, right?
Or you're like, who is that guy? You're like, what's that guy's name? I know him.
And like,
Yeah.
and so like I came when Superfly DMC was open, I came out to it and had an opportunity to walk in and see the execution of a vision from someone who I thought that I got to know a little bit.
Yeah.
And I looked around and it was just like, okay, like dude's smart. Dude's got artistic ambition. Dude really likes his hip hop. Dude is obviously a talented as hell cook. He's a family man. So let's start from the beginning because that's where like my introduction to Dave Mcdonald was. And obviously, I think that you're a great guy and a fascinating person. But like, let's go backwards.
Yeah. I've been in the industry for 28 years now. Started in high school, like a lot of people do, just looking for a job, washing dishes.
Yeah.
And I've always had an affinity for cooking. My mom was a pretty good home cook. My dad was a pretty good home cook. And so I always kind of like to be around food, clearly. And I just kind of stumbled into it. And I tried to get out a lot, many times, try to go to school. Oh, I'm going for art.
Yeah.
And that lasts a year. And I'm like, I don't want to paint anymore. And, I went for English and then that didn't, I went for business. That didn't happen. And it was like that kitchen job is always waiting for me, when I was ready to come back. And worked in just about every environment from cafes to diners to fine dining to seasonal businesses, catering, whatever. And eventually I was like, in my mid 20s, and you're like, what the heck am I doing with my life?
Yeah. What's next?
And I'm like, I got to start taking this seriously. So, just kind of stuck with it. Started being more professional. The soft skills that they talk about. Yeah,
I don't know.
I know. I still have a hard time showing up on time, but being there is half the battle.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started taking it a little more seriously. I was working at Benucci's in Pittsburgh Plaza.
Okay.
And which is still there. They've been there since probably the mid '90s, and kind of just a casual pasta mill, but it was brisk and
pushing volume then.
600 covers on a Friday night.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
we were
all
right
right.
next door to the movie theater. And so that's kind of where I learned, like, okay, this is how you put things together. Like, you have this line, all your mise en place, and somehow I can take all these little things and I can feed all these people.
Right.
And so that's kind of where, like, the organization behind it, kind of seeing the ability to start and finish something, was really satisfying to me. And plus, I just love food anyways.
Right.
So from there, I ended up going to Finger Lakes Gaming and Racetrack. And so that was a step up for me. At the time, they had just become a casino. They were a thoroughbred racetrack.
Okay.
Since the '60s.
Yeah.
Just hot dogs, concessions, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And they had just become a casino, and they were being flushed with money from New York State.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got in there right on time, and they started doing expansions. And so I had worked my way up as a sous chef. It was a corporate environment. They were very much into continuing education. So even though I didn't have a strict culinary background, or I never took culinary classes, they kind of put me in situations, whether it was classes I could take, working with corporate chefs that we had. We had a CMC on staff that we would get to the privilege of working with occasionally to kind of tighten up our skills.
Sure.
Just kind of absorb whatever we could get from him. His name was Roland Hennin. And got to work with him a few times and just kind of see where you could take it from there. But I was there for 12 years, eventually became the executive chef.
Okay.
And got to travel all over the country, working at other casinos, other properties that we had.
Because casinos they do have that structure within that they're trying to educate and within, like, not, whether it's ACF or not, like they're trying to structure it, like,
right. Yeah. So we that was part of it. ACF was a big part of it. I would have to get my chef certifications.
Mm-hmm. And for anybody that's listening and watching, like, home cooks or even just people who like to go out to eat, ACF is what?
It's the American Culinary Federation, and they're just kind of an educational body that they do practical examinations is a big thing that they do to test the skills of chefs, kind of so people know who you say you are.
Sure.
And they're also about continuing education. Just you and I both know, like, we could spend our lives studying food, and we're never gonna know everything.
Hopefully,
we're never gonna. We're just scratching the surface, and so I think things are always changing. Trends are changing,
right? But having a set vocabulary, a set structure of how to frame your skill set and what it is that you can bring, where your development as a cook goes. It is a very valuable tool.
Absolutely.
Both for you as an individual cook in how you're going to progress through a system, but also for an institution knowing how to hire a person as well.
Right. And then in kind of for them, seeing that you're investing in yourself, there's a relationship there where they're kind of willing to put more back into you.
Sure.
So I took advantage of that while I had the opportunity. The casino business has become very competitive in New York State. And so after 12 years in, we were starting to downsize. We were facing pretty strict competition from Del Lago. And I just wanted out. And I was like, I was turning 40. I'm like, it's now or never. Got to pull the trigger, and just took the money and ran, and started with the idea of Superfly.
Sure.
And originally, I just wanted to start small, and was like, it's just gonna be like a food truck to start, and maybe we can move into a brick and mortar down the road.
Okay.
And over time, like, just kept thinking of like a restaurant, and a space opened up right around the corner from my house. Literally it's about a mile. I could have walked there if I wanted to,
right.
And didn't.
Nobody ever wants to.
But I wanted to. My wife did a couple times, and thought it was perfect. Perfect, right in my backyard. The kids are close by, and we opened in 2019.
Yeah.
July 2019. You were there, and that first year is brutal. You're just trying to dig yourself out of the hole that you put yourself in, and you're still just trying to establish yourself. You're trying to figure out your menu, what people like, what they don't like. You're trying to figure out the area, and 8 months into our baby business, March I think it was March 15th, March 16th. They shut everything down.
Yeah.
So I had a 112-seat dining room, and now it's empty for 3 months or whatever. And 3 kids, and they're school age, and now they're home. And at this point, we're struggling. So my wife Diane, who was never really supposed to be working at the business every day,
Right.
she's there every day now, working 40 hours, and we've got the kids in the back room doing their homework and trying to go back there and help them when we can, trying to feed them when we can get back there, because we're running a business,
Yep.
you know, nonstop from open to close every day. And there was a huge outpouring of support early on. You know, people were like, oh, we got to support these restaurants and these businesses. And then when we realized it wasn't going to be 2 weeks, it wasn't going to be a month. And then it was kind of like, you know, everybody else is in the same quandary that we are,
Right.
in some way or another.
Except not, because you're still in the early phase.
Right.
You're trying to make it through that first hump.
Yeah. And you know, and we're small too. We didn't have the resources to, you know, stick it out, and we didn't have the resources to really like go out and like find money, you know, or even we applied for some of the PPP. You know, I'm proud to say all that money that we took for that, every cent of it went to my staff. You know, we gave them bonuses for staying on, for all that stuff. But that was about it, you know. And then it was like people kind of moved on with their lives, and you know, we reopened the dining rooms eventually, but it was just it was never the same.
Sure.
And so we held on for 8 months, and then November of 2020. So we went from July 19 to November 2020. And that was hard. It was like my father, who was a partner with me, and he's retired, and, you know, I'd use some of his retirement money to help get us open. And, you know, he was like, we both cried, you know. He's like, I'm in my 40s, he's in his 70s, and it's like we're crying. And he's like, you know, I feel like somebody died.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And,
it's a lot.
And it was like all that I could think about were the people that I worked with, you know, that my kitchen manager, you know, who came with me from the casino.
Right.
My front of the house manager that came with me, you know, these people that were ride or die for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like you feel like you failed them a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that part.
But at the same time, like, you feel also like this whole situation, you got kind of robbed too, you know, like we were in February before it all happened. We were surging. We were like, we think this is going to work out.
Well, let's be honest. Your food was spectacular.
Oh, thanks.
There was a reason why you were popular. There was a reason why you were successful, because, you know, the food you were putting out, and it sounds really crazy to say this to people who aren't restaurant cooks or just like to go out to eat, but like, hot food hot, cold food cold, proper use of salt.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, so you just do that good. And now let's be creative, right? Now let's play with flavors. Let's mix salty and sweet, and start combining things like how you were doing so smartly and brilliantly. So, like, let's talk about, because, you know, we'll get back to the closing of it for a second. Well, let's Oreo cookie this for a second, because I saw the smile on your face when you started talking about people and things and ideas. So, like, let's Talk about the concept behind DMC, because obviously you had a lot of thoughts, and it was really personal.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's a dream that I've had since I really probably got serious about cooking. So I was probably in my 20s, and it was always one of those someday type of things. And even when I was at the casino and writing menus every day for buffets and caterings and bars or whatever, I'd write my own menus for myself.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that I wouldn't give them, you know, that I'm like, someday this is the food that I'm going to make. I'm not going to be pigeonholed into making casino food, you know.
And the funny part about that is that's the kid in the driveway it's 2 seconds left, inbound shot,
Yeah.
3-point for the win, right? But
Yeah.
you're writing down your menu. And
Yeah.
that's what I know what that thought process is. That's passion. So keep going.
Yeah, and I still have a lot of those menus. Some of them 10, 15 years old that I wrote, and some of them are funny. I go back and look at them and be like, oh, I know what chef I was trying to copy there, or
Sure.
what cookbook I was reading at that time. But over time, all those things kind of inform and permeate all of everything you're doing. And it's like, even I was looking around at some of the cookbooks that you have, and like I have a lot of them. And one of the Thomas Keller cookbooks, he talks about seasoning with vinegar. And it's like, everybody thinks about seasoning in terms of salt and pepper, and they don't think about acid.
Right.
And I remember working with a chef one time, and like we were talking about how like a Big Mac is like a perfect bite. You got the salty and the sweet, the special sauce and the pungent onions and the crisp lettuce and the toasty sesame seed bun. And he was like, the Big Mac is not a recipe, it's a formula.
Sure.
And
I agree.
so everything I do, I started thinking about that way, kind of mad scientist, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I think this flavor might work with that flavor. Let's try it. Sometimes they don't work, but that's for me to figure out, and then the ones that do work, I try to pass on and share with people.
And it's easy to figure out how to do that if you're going to make like a little canapé, right?
Right.
Because like you've only got one bite, but how do you translate that into a sandwich, right? And I was always a big believer, and I think clearly by your menu you were too. I was always a big believer in the power of a sandwich, right?
Yeah.
It is such a vehicle, a people-friendly vehicle for whatever flavor you want to put, right?
You can turn anything into a sandwich.
100%.
Literally. Yeah.
And that's a great argument too, the what is a sandwich
Yeah.
argument, right? Like
I just think if you can get bread around it, it's a sandwich.
right, yeah. There's all these criteria, and invariably it turns into an argument at some point in the kitchen with people arguing for or against anything being right. But so talk about some of the sandwiches, talk about some of the flavors, talk about acid, but you also played with textures a lot also.
Yeah. It's along the same lines, but it's like when you start thinking about things like mouthfeel, and it's like you're always trying things, and you're like, something's missing, and then sometimes it's crunch, sometimes it's the snap of a pickle, or some just something as simple as some iceberg lettuce, and that's kind of when you fall back on some of those fundamentals sometimes, where you're like, sometimes you can overcomplicate things, and then you're like, it's really,
Yep.
you have this star, whether it's the meat or the sauce or whatever that you made, that's really going to be like the flavor profile, but then it's like the rest is kind of
Right.
the rest is kind of elementary. You need bread,
Sure.
some good bread, some good condiments.
It's and having good bread was a big thing, right? You did work with Amazing Grains.
Yeah.
And obviously they were making really great bread.
Incredible
right?
bread.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite.
And so that's a great factor of it. You talked about sauces, and you did do a lot of sauce work, right? And that's kind of like the sex appeal on a lot of stuff, right? Everybody talks about sauces. So like because you had some cold, some hot, you were kind of all over the place. Talk about some of those flavor combinations.
Again, it's just like when you're putting together a dish, like we had a cold noodle with a spicy vinaigrette, and so it was like hot and cold, but the hot part is the seasoning, and the dish itself is cold.
I love that part, right? Playing with that
Yeah,
idea.
and so it's like there's heat there. It's just not, the heat you were expecting.
Right.
But
one of the things that like inspired me from your food was you had this playfulness of things that you liked to eat either when you were a kid, like you were trying to either like like step up
Yeah.
and refine something that was from your childhood, or you were even just like almost like you were like a comic book artist sitting down with his sketch and you were like, okay, so here's a cool idea of a hamburger, but how can we really draw this fucked up and weird, and like let's go that route?
I think a lot of that came from you see a lot of chefs, they kind of talk about their inspirations, and like I feel like so many chefs have way more interesting stories than I do as far as where they came from. And I'm like, I'm a white kid from the suburbs, suburban parents, and I'm like, what's my my background?
Sure.
What are my roots, my culture, really?
Yeah.
And so, kind of looking at it, and so like we had a fried chicken sandwich called the After School Special, and we made hoisin grape jelly. And instead of peanut butter, we made a tahini sauce.
Yep.
And so it was a peanut butter and jelly fried chicken sandwich, but there was no peanut butter in it. There was a little bit of jelly that went in the hoisin, but it was kind of more trying to take things that I remembered and make them interesting.
Right.
Because whatever, peanut butter and jelly is great.
Sure.
I still love peanut butter and jelly, but I don't really want to start a business selling them.
But like that, I mean, peanut butter and jelly, I try to explain to people like foie gras who've never had it. And they're like, well, like, tell me what it's all about. And I said, well, when I've had it and it's been its best is when the chef is trying to do a take on peanut butter and jelly. and they all look at me like, I don't understand what the hell you just said, but it's like, it's true, right?
Yeah.
You take something. I was trying to explain to my kids the other day, one of my favorite things growing up was a spaghetti sandwich. Right? Where I just made real like super ghetto like garlic toast and took yesterday's spaghetti, threw it in the center, and just like ate it like a caveman, right?
Yeah.
Like just all over me. But that was a great memory.
Yeah.
And like I'm talking about it right now, and I probably am going to go make one
Right,
for dinner.
yeah.
And I don't have any spaghetti or even any of the ingredients, but I want it now. So that's like I loved that, or the playfulness of it, right? And when you walked in, there was a vibe, right?
Yeah.
Everybody nowadays they're all trying to achieve a vibe. They're all trying to get to a vibe. But like you very honestly walked into that space and were hit with a vibe like a baseball bat in your face with the artwork and the colors and the names of the dishes on the menu and the music that was being played and everything like that. So like that's you understood what you wanted your concept to be.
Yeah, and I think maybe my only regret about it is that maybe like we shouldn't have done it in Penfield.
Yeah,
but
so do you think location was good for you, bad for you? Do you think it wasn't the end?
Ultimately, I don't think it helped us.
Right.
One thing so Wegmans was our landlord, and at first, like you're kind of like, well, they're such a big company, they seem like they're good to work with. And we were kind of down at the end of their plaza there in Penfield. Mm-hmm. And after we kind of moved in, I kind of realized some things about the space. They had kind of redirected all the traffic patterns to kind of go around our part of the plaza.
Sure.
And then they had also kept the landscaping so high that you couldn't really see, get a clear vantage point of us from the street. And
not exactly corporate espionage, but not.
No, but it was kind of one of those things like, hey, you could trim the landscaping so people can like see over the crest. Yeah. Little things like that, I think some people didn't want to drive out to Penfield. We were out like close to 250 there, so it really isn't that far if you hop on 490 and come up 441. But the factors with the location. I feel confident we would have been able to work through those things without COVID. Right. But the combination of the two was just kind of our death knell.
Right.
And the space itself, I mean, right along with the menu writing and everything, that was the same thing. The colors, I wanted to be bright and pop in. And
they were like greens and oranges and
the artwork. I had been collecting the artwork for probably about 10 years. There's this artist named Steve Keen who does
really amazing, just awesome. I want to buy your stuff. It's great.
He does these kind of abstract renderings of like famous album covers. So like I had all these like abstract renderings of like all these Beastie Boys albums and David Bowie and Pavement and all these bands that I like. And that was definitely part of the vibe. Even the music, like I would just sit up at night making playlists. Like
It felt, I mean this in every complimentary way possible. The attention to detail when I walked in felt Wes Anderson-esque, right? Like music, lighting, colors, art, names of stuff. Everything was very intentional, right?
Yeah.
There was not a lot. There was not a lot of details there that didn't seem intentional.
And I mean, ultimately, the way it ended up was how I had envisioned it.
Great.
So I was happy, with the overall vibe of the space. I was happy.
That's great. So, like we alluded to it, and we said we'd get back to it, and I can absolutely get with you, having been this close to my own closing.
Yeah.
Like, let's get to the closing because it's not easy. And I think opening a business, there's a lot of things that you got to it. You had enough money to get open, and you had enough money to start to stay open. But then there's operational capital that really kind of gets thin. I mean, I had to go to people for operational capital when we first started, and those are the kind of things that like people don't think of.
Right.
Right. What are some other pieces of advice like that of that you look back on now that you wish that you had known, that you wish that somebody had told you prior to opening your business?
I wish I had started smaller.
Okay.
Like I was confident that I could take care of a 100-seat restaurant, but keeping it full and all that is a different story. And sometimes I'm like, I wish I'd done the food truck first. Like, definitely would have been a much easier pivot. And during COVID, it would have been perfect.
Right.
People were doing pop-ups everywhere.
Yep.
That was the other thing too, is like a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of cooks lost their jobs. And they're starting pop-ups. People want to support those. And the pop-ups are great. A lot of good business came out of them, but they didn't have rent to pay, and,
Yeah, no, it was hard.
yeah, it was hard. And it's like you're saying, it's like, I don't begrudge anybody. But at the same time, I was like, I wasn't going to be the type of person with my hand out, being like, somebody come help me, somebody come bail me out. And we tapped out our resources, cashed out the 401ks. We did, short of selling the house, we went every avenue that we could. Because it was our baby, and we just didn't want to see it die.
And that's hard. And it's when you put that amount of time and effort into something, that emotional connection is real. And then you add on top of it the financial burden that you put on yourself, right, to chase the dream,
Right.
And to try to explain what that is like to the average person is not easy. No. To try to explain that to a person who has managed a restaurant for a long period of time but never owned one, that person might think that they understand the heartache that you're going through, but it really is a unique thing that until you've experienced that, you don't know it.
Right. Yeah. And you're not really prepared for it. When it finally happened, it was like, the writing's on the wall. But
sure.
When you finally have to pull the trigger, and you just, it's like a wave. You just.
And do you think that you're better off for it? Like at the end of the day, you're financially better off having closed the business now because it would have been the ruin of you had you kept going, correct?
Yeah.
So ultimately,
you could have literally lost the house.
Correct. Yeah. So you made the right decision. Mm-hmm. Have you found some peace with it emotionally yet?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a huge learning experience to learn a lot about myself.
Yeah.
I learn a lot about other people, going through it too. My wife has been tremendous, so supportive, really kind of watching me fall apart, and something that I had held on to for so long, and then to just see it kind of slip through my fingers. But we, at the time when the restaurant closed, they were still offering unemployment benefits to owners.
Okay.
And I got some offers right out of the gate. Good ones too. Ones that in hindsight, I'm like, should I have taken them? But I needed some time to heal. I was just emotionally broken, physically not in great shape, just from pushing myself. And,
You start burning the candle on both ends.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And you can't escape from it. I was going in there even like I was trying to take a day off, but then sometimes sneaking in on my one day off just to do whatever, clean.
And your brain never turns off. You're still thinking about it.
And you're kind of like, oh, I got to be in the space, and so even losing that actually was hard. Having that place that was kind of like my fortress of solitude.
Yeah.
Where I could go and just like blow off some steam, be by myself, put some music on, do a little work.
It's funny. My kids used to call my shop Daddy's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they were like, well, where are you going to go now? And I was like, holy God, I don't know. That's existentially, that fucked me up.
Yeah. It was kind of hard to lose that. But yeah, I took some time off, did some self-medicating, probably a little too much.
Yeah.
And, at some point I was like, fuck, I got to do something again, and it was like the idea of going back and working for somebody again is the hardest part really to come to terms with. And
did you ever romanticize it?
I did.
Did you ever be like, I'm going to be the best fucking employee that anybody ever got?
I did. I think there were certain places that I got some good offers. I turned them all down. I was kind of holding out for some things that didn't come to fruition. And when the things I was hoping for didn't come to fruition, then you kind of feel even more lost because you're like, all right, what am I going to do now?
Sure.
And people kept messaging me on Instagram about this cookie that we served at the restaurant. And we just called it the sweet and salty cookie. That's all we called it. It was a sesame and white chocolate cookie. And the idea behind it was originally I wanted something that was going to be like wax for the guests. Like, oh, it's your first time here. Like, have some cookies, Oh, you're on your way out the door. Oh, you got a kid here? Have a cookie. And it started off as that. And then people were like, yo, where are the cookies at? It became a real thing at the restaurant where we started. It was one of those things we were just, putting them on plates or handing them to people. And we had to start packaging them because people were asking for them. So months and months after the restaurants closed, people are still messaging me on IG. Yo, can I get the cookie recipe? And I'm like, what? No. And people kept messaging me about the cookies. And we're like, we don't have any money. We don't have a space. And a friend of a friend was like, hey, I know this church. They got an empty space. They got a convection oven. They're like, you just need to get a mixer. They got workspace. So we looked into it. Space looked pretty good. And so we're like, we'll start making cookies again. Because for us, it was the one thing from the restaurant that we could hold on to.
Sure.
It was still could be tangible to us. We can't make the food anymore. We don't have the space anymore.
But a scalable food, right?
Right. A food that we can, just that Diane and I can churn out.
Like you said, smaller.
Right. Exactly. And so, and really this is almost too small for us to really support ourselves with, but it's keeping the dream alive. And that's all it's about.
That's cool.
The cookies definitely do not pay my bills. But it's a labor of love. It's something that I can still do with my family, the kids, put the stickers on the bags, and it's still a family affair. We still love coming up with new flavors, kind of taking that theme of salty and sweet, and mixing up those flavors. So it's like we still have that Superfly vibe. We retired the Superfly name,
Yep.
but we took the DMC and made the Dope Munchie Crew.
It was when the name for the cookie company came out, I was just like, I mean, you get DMC is, that has connotation. That's like the double entendre that you can use for the rest of your life.
Right.
So you got to figure out how to keep that. And so Dope Munchie Crew, I was like, guy's so good, man.
Yeah, and we originally it was Dank Munchie Crew.
Yep.
And my sister-in-law, who does our graphic design for us, she was like, I don't know if I like that connotation.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm like, but stoners love cookies, But so we changed it to Dope. We agreed on Dope, and Dope Munchie Crew it is.
I never gave up with the word dope. I've been using it my entire life.
Yeah, me too.
I get a lot of weird looks when I use it sometimes. People are like, really? Still? I was like, bro, I'm wearing overalls. Leave me alone. What are some of the most successful or yes, the white chocolate sesame cookie is just classic.
We renamed that. It's called the OG now.
Yep.
White chocolate sesame. That one we have all the time. We have to make all the time.
The peanut butter and jelly, shut the front door.
Yeah, we haven't made that one in a while. I know that was one of your favorites, and you were huge at helping us by, carrying the cookies at McCann's and like just putting them right at the register. So many people saw them there.
That was the easiest sale.
Was for us. I mean, that was so valuable for us because we weren't initially planning on being like a wholesale business.
Right.
We were kind of late to the COVID pop-up phenomenon where people were driving out and picking things up.
Right.
And we tried that for a little while and then realized people weren't going to drive out and pick up cookies. So
right.
We went the wholesale route and it's been really successful. And one of the things I love about it is being able to form relationships with these other small businesses, kind of partnering with them.
And as either an ancillary, like I got to, as a butcher shop, as a butcher, I had a different relationship with other restaurants than I did as a sort of restaurateur. I wasn't really competition. So like I could walk in and like we could talk meat and things were cool. Right. Like, as another restaurateur, people might've been like, all right, well, this guy's, his sandwiches are really good and he's taking a little bit of money out of my pocket maybe. But, as Dope Munchie Crew, he's doing something really cool and adding value to my business. And so that like it not for nothing, but it can be a little bit more collaborative. You can have some more fun with some people.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done some, collabs are kind of what everybody does now, I guess. I don't, but we've done some cool ones. Costanza's sausage.
Yep.
Out there on 104.
Great stuff.
Scott was giving us his bacon ends and I was pushing them through a meat grinder and like processing them. And we were making bacon cookies for Costanza. They came out, I don't want to toot my own horn. They came out pretty well. And they loved them, which was the most important part. But just kind of having that synergy, like, hey, like, let's do something fun.
Exactly.
And that's definitely rewarding when it can be fun.
So that leads into a little bit about some stuff that you're doing now over at Swiftwater.
Yeah. Yeah. So they, right around the time we were starting the cookie business and we were like, things are going to be tight. We had kind of had unrealistic expectations about our initial sales and kind of seeing that like, okay, we're going to need a little extra boost. Andy Cook, who owns Swiftwater, was just like, hey, initially he was like, hey, we need a chef. And I was like, not interested. And then he was kind of like, well, would you just think about giving us some help a couple days a week? I was like, sure, So I came out and just kind of helping them. Wasn't really too much into the food. I loved the beer there, but I was kind of like, whatever. I'm going to keep my mouth shut, keep my head down.
Sure.
And then over the course of the year, there's just personnel changes, stuff happens, and then all of a sudden it's like, I'm not the new guy anymore. And then they're like, hey, can you pick up another day? You pick up another day. And then, a year in, I'm kind of running the place.
Right.
So, which was accidental. It was never intentional.
Right. But sometimes some of the best things do start that way, right?
Well, I think it was good because I think if I had gone in just guns blazing, doing what I wanted to do,
Right.
I probably would have rubbed people the wrong way.
Sure.
They wouldn't have really got to know who I was. So I went in there and just made the food that they wanted me to make, whether I liked it or not. And some of it was good. I'm not being critical of it or anybody that worked there, but it wasn't what I wanted to be doing per se. And over time, my influence just kind of shone through. I kind of started to influence how they were doing things, even just organizationally. Let's do it this way, instead of that way. And over time, it was like, oh, let's ask Dave, before we do something. And so it's been nice because they haven't put a lot of expectations on me. They kind of let me do what I want.
That's a good thing.
Nobody really gives me too much trouble, but I think a lot of it too. I like to think a lot of it is I come in there and kind of try to raise the bar a little bit too. We have a really, really small staff, really young staff.
It's a small kitchen back there to begin with, right?
We have the entire kitchen staff is 5 people.
Right.
And, got a lot of young kids working for me, which they're inexperienced, but like they just want to be there. And I'm like, that's all I need.
Nurture
you're clay, that. Right? And so that's rewarding too. It's like I'm getting long in the tooth. I don't know how many years I got left on the line, really. But to see these young kids come in and be excited and want to work with me, and I'm like, hey, cool. So.
But and like, that's just to say too that like, cool food is cool,
right?
No matter what, no matter what, no matter where,
right.
No matter what age, no matter what your background
right.
is, cool food is just cool food. And the menus that I've been seeing, come out for some of the events that have been going on and so on and so forth. It's like that's the food that will drive people to an event that might have been on the fence. Right. And I love Swiftwater. Those guys are near and dear to my heart because they opened up right near when we did. They've just been super cool guys the whole time. Andy is just, just salt of the earth.
Yeah.
And
no ego.
And their beer is always great. Mm-hmm. Their beer is always great. And so to see that place sort of in the middle of what feels to me like a renaissance where both sides of the plate feel like they're being taken care of, right? Like the glass was always great. Now the plate feels like it's like really, really excellent right now. And I love that. And, I think it's great that you're there too. So I don't necessarily, I know Swiftwater to be a place that plays a lot of music. They have their record. What day do they spin records?
They don't do that anymore.
Okay.
I think they should bring it back, the vinyl night.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
The question is like, is their music tastes up to snuff for you?
Yeah.
You're pretty eclectic, I know.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of different stuff. We do a lot of indie rock in the dining room.
Okay.
Just because I think it's kind of like palatable for a wide range of people. Sometimes we give them a hard time for playing sad. We call it sad cowboy rock. A little bit too much of that. But in the kitchen,
it was bumping.
Oh, in the kitchen, we got a big old Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah,
looks like a little amp.
Yep.
And sometimes they got to tell us to turn it down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they should.
Yeah.
You got to be rowdy every now and then. I mean, if you're not fighting for your right to party back there, then what the
exactly.
fuck? But so what's on heavy rotation nowadays?
I tend to fall back just kind of on a lot of old standbys. Like in the kitchen, a lot of times I'll just put my likes on.
Yep.
And New stuff.
Service isn't really for like finding new music. It's for catching what you've already got the
or
vibe
like
with.
remembering, some random record. And
Right.
like, oh, it's cool. It's on streaming. New stuff. Like, I really like the new Lil Yachty record.
Okay.
It's like,
Unexpected. I'm in.
yeah. So he, it's cool. Like he and like guys like Tyler, the creator, and they're like, we don't want to be pigeonholed into just being like rappers. They're like, we're artists. And Lil Yachty was like, I want to make like a psychedelic record, like a psychedelic rock record. And so,
I mean, I'll give that a shot because he's not a rapper. He's not.
Well, I mean,
I refuse.
There's a lot of auto tune.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's a really good record. Toby Wigway.
Okay.
Have you heard?
Send it. Give me a link.
Incredible.
Give me a link.
Incredible. Like maybe record of the year.
I mean, for sure.
I'll send it to you. They were on Fallon.
Okay.
A couple of weeks ago.
So that's another question. So where do you, because there's so much stuff nowadays, right? So much new music. Where are you filtering some of that in from? Like where are you finding?
It's mostly the algorithms.
Okay.
Like I'll put on a record that I like and then just let it play out. And then all of a sudden I'm like, some news playing. I'm like, what's this?
Gotcha.
A lot of it too is like, I do work with kids, and they're like I'll turn them on to something, from like the 70s or 80s or something like that. And they're like, oh my God, I've never heard, this. And then they're turning me on to the stuff that's on the street, so.
I'll miss that part of it.
Yeah.
Having that youth around, that injection of what is actually happening.
Right. You feel like, even though I know, like, I'm not cool, like, I'm cool adjacent. Like, I've at least, being in the kitchen, it's like you still kind of got it's an education every day. The conversations that you have. And
you and I are the coolest middle-aged men in this room right now. That's all that matters. It's funny because, like, I used to rely on algorithms, right? Like Pandora was better for that than I think Spotify is, right?
Right, the thumbs up and thumbs down.
Right, yeah. And it was much more like trying to get you into some new stuff. And nowadays, man, I do rely on other people. Like I've got one other butcher, and I shouted him out on Instagram the other day, David Gathie, Conscious Carnivore, Madison, Wisconsin. What's up? That man's got an ear for all kinds of music, and he's constantly screenshotting or putting up what he's listening to. And all I do is I picture grab everything that man puts on his and then like I'll go back like once a week and I'll make a playlist out of everything he listened to so I'm usually about a month behind you, David, but I'm catching up.
I mean, streaming is cool from that regard, that you can, like, I do miss the days of like record bin hunting, even though, Record Archive's still there. It's not that I can't. I just, vinyl's gotten so expensive. It's not cheap. Thing. It's not cheap anymore, like it was back in the day. But, the independent record stores have kind of gone by the wayside for the most part. And now it's like, and how do you find music? Right.
And nowadays too, artists are they're releasing things differently. Like now people are they're going to put out a single.
They're just releasing singles,
right? Yeah. So you got it. It used to be they would release an album and you'd get that album. Obviously, you're going to listen to the title track or whatever, but then you're looking for that deep cut, right? You're looking for the you bought the new album. Have you listened to this? You play track 8.
Yeah.
Right. Play track 8. You'll thank me later. Right. Nowadays, it's just you almost have to know that a single is coming out.
Right.
To go get it. But
yeah,
it even Weird Al is doing that nowadays. Weird Al stopped putting out albums. What are you doing?
Well, everybody digests things in little blurbs now. It's like the art of an album is kind of lost, where it's kind of this circular story, that you start. Go through the whole story and then it ends and you can kind of start it over again. But yeah, like you're saying, like, that track that, like you're listening to an album and you're driving down the highway or whatever, and it's just like that perfect moment. The track comes on, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
And you don't really get that anymore.
And it just the unexpected cut, right? Or the track that you forgot about on an album, or the one that you didn't give a good enough shot when it first came out, and you go back and you're like, man, I was wrong about this. That's the whole Ben's album for me with Radiohead. Not to go totally different genre, but I'm a huge Radiohead fan. That might be my favorite band of all time.
Yeah.
And the Benz was an album that I never gave enough play, and I go back and listen to it now, and I'm like,
classic. All-time classic.
And maybe I was trying to avoid it because all the nerds were like, no, it's the Benz, man. And anyways, it's great. I was wrong.
It's a good album. You ever see Radiohead?
That's a bucket list.
Yeah.
Awesome question. Bucket list bands, bucket list concerts that you have been to or have still on the list.
Okay, so I have seen Radiohead. I saw them on the OK Computer tour.
Oh, you dick!
And in Ottawa, I drove up to Ottawa with some friends, and we saw them. And it was like an open room, so there was no seats. And most ridiculous thing, there was like a mosh pit, just because so many people were crammed. There was like 1,000 people crammed in this tiny little space. But I was up there. I was smushed up there and could see them. But the funniest thing was Tom York. They played like all their hits. Mm-hmm. And this was before they had really gotten like into the electronic stuff.
Right.
But they played Creep. And Tom York prefaced the song. He goes, here's the song for all your fucking karaoke machines. And then they ding, 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 go into the song, and you're like, people didn't care. They pop for it, and they don't care. They're playing Creep. Yeah.
They made a whole movie about that one. There's a documentary called "Meeting People Is Easy."
Oh yeah.
And it's just like it could just be subtitled "Why We Hate the Song Creep."
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I remember that. They have the footage of that video where the fish tank is filling up in his head
several times,
and he's like choking. Yeah,
spitting and shit. It's fun. So other concerts. What are some other cool shows you've been to?
Oh man, I don't really. With kids, it's hard to get
nowadays,
out just in general. And concerts, good concerts don't come around here. Around Rochester, it's like you got to go to like Toronto or New York. I'd like to see LCD Sound System.
Agreed.
Just for the show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those bands like that has kind of lasted the test of time for me from like their first recordings, like in the early 2000s to even, I don't know how many times he's retired or whatever and come back.
Yeah, cut it out. Stop toying with my emotions.
But everything. I mean, I watched they had that concert film. Shut Up and Play the Hits, I think it was called. Yeah. And,
the Dance Yourself Clean video from that one gets me in the feels.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And he does that one song with Reggie Watts.
Yeah,
and Reggie Watts is like doing the little scat thing at the end, and then you're just like
mind blown.
I'd love to see them. This is gonna go way back. I'd love to see The Cure.
Yeah, man,
a band that I've like been so close to seeing a few times, then just missed. I'd like to see Public Enemy.
The newest version, or like historical, like go back in time.
Like Chuck Flav, Terminator X.
Yeah, me too.
But I was just like a little bit too young to catch them when they were like out touring a lot.
Yep.
Wu-Tang.
Yep. Have never seen them.
Me neither. I'd love to see them. But probably my biggest regret was I always wanted to see the Beastie Boys, and I had tickets to go see them. They were going to play at Darien Lake with Rage Against the Machine.
Oh,
and Mike D broke his collarbone in a bicycle accident right before the tour started. They canceled the whole thing. I never got to see them.
Thanks, Mike Diamond.
Yeah, rip MCA. But
yeah, that would have been an awesome. Darien Lake is, if there was going to be a cool show coming through, that was the spot, right?
Probably, yeah. Like somebody of that magnitude, of that size.
If it was going to be like the arena outdoor tour, that's where it was going.
To find some of those like good indie acts or like hip hop acts, like,
sure.
I think you got to go to those smaller venues and in bigger cities.
Like, and I think that's where you want to see those bands.
Yeah,
too,
true.
Right?
Yeah, I don't really want to see somebody at an amphitheater.
Like I'm wearing an Atmosphere shirt, and I saw Atmosphere when they came to Town Ballroom in Buffalo. It's like 2007, 2008 ish, and what a cool space that is. Like that's the kind of like now Atmosphere has gotten a lot bigger. They wouldn't play that space anymore, but like I can't imagine seeing them anywhere else. There wasn't a bad spot to watch that show. You were crowded, you were crammed in there, but it was great. And that's why hip hop acts are tough like that, right? Like it's not one of those pyrotechnics or like stage show heavy styles of act, right?
Yeah, hip hop I think has had kind of a bad live reputation because sometimes it's hard to take that magic in the studio and then translate it to like a live performance,
right?
Like I think even just like, I'm not a rapper, but I think rhyming live to a beat, like the breath control and everything that they have to use, like sometimes it's hard. Like
because they're doing it on the album, not moving. They're standing still, and now they're trying to walk around a stage.
Yeah, like the one MF Doom did that one live album that's like he just cut it as like a 40-minute track, no skips or anything. And like you anytime you listen to any live rap recording, or like Jay-Z did the Unplugged with the Roots.
Yeah,
that was a great live album.
Yeah,
but they're skipping lines and stuff just because there's no way that they can like get all the words in live.
What have I been listening to? The Kenny Beats album had some stuff on it I really liked. Absol has an album out right now that has a bunch of really good beats and vibes to it. Who is it there? Not Benny the Butcher. Who's the guy who he beefs with there?
Oh, Freddie Gibbs.
Yeah, what a great. I mean, some samples and a great sound.
That
right?
album is really good. I'm glad you brought that one up because that one's definitely been getting some play in the kitchen. Coda the Friend.
Okay, yeah,
he's got a new album out. That one we've been listening to a lot. Black Thought and Danger Mouse did that album. Oh.
Like every track on that is so good. That's an album that feels like it's been out forever, but it's just because it's all good. It's
He's
just so good.
Like one of the most underrated MCs. I feel like
100%.
Like you ever see that 10-minute freestyle that he did? And was it on Sway or
everything he does is good, man.
You like couldn't. He's wearing the fedora at the beginning, and they start the beat, and you're like, I'm like, even if this is a written. The fact that he could remember it is incredible. But
correct.
By the end of the freestyle, his hat is off. He's got a bead of sweat going down. And I mean, it's like this guy's spitting for 10 minutes, and it was taxing him.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. And like, it's one of those genres too. I wish, I wish more people were successful with it locally, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to shout out another buddy of mine out in Syracuse, a kid called Danger. Check him out. Really cool band out in Syracuse. They, they're cooks. They're just guys out living life that also are really talented musicians. The MC is a friend of mine, a former colleague, and just one of the best MCs you never heard of and need to.
Nice.
And it's they're out there getting it done now, and they've got a rock and roll vibe to them, which sounds like it's out of place, which sounds like it might be like the rock rap of the '90s, but it's not. And they got a guy on the turntable scratching it up. They got a fucking ninja assassin on drums. So it's that to me is a blueprint of what it is I want to see from people locally making music.
The live drums make a huge difference.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about where DMC started. We talked about where DMC is. Do you have anything kind of like in the books of the next evolution of something that you're trying to work on, or are we trying to find rhythm where we're at?
I think we're in a good rhythm with the cookies. My wife Diane manages most of the cookie business. I'm kind of responsible. I come up with the flavors.
Bad scientist.
I make the dough, and then she pretty much does everything else.
I love the dough.
I make the dough. I don't even scoop it. She scoops it and everything, and she's responsible for the packaging, and making sure everything gets out there.
Yeah.
I drop off the occasional delivery.
Sure.
That's about it. But it's really kind of become her baby, especially that I'm at Swiftwater as much as I am now. But we're hoping we've been working out of a church on Portland Ave for about a year and a half. Space that wasn't really getting utilized. It's been a growing relationship with that church. We make as many cookies as we can out of that space during the course of the week, and we're happy. We sell every cookie that we make, but we're hoping maybe to make some modifications to the kitchen that we're working out of, and maybe expand our repertoire a little bit, whether it's catering or private chefing. But I would love to do something in the DMC vein, beyond cookies again someday.
Yeah.
But it's got to make sense. It's got to be reasonable. It's got to be something that we can sustain. So we'll see.
I think the demand is there. I think the demand is there.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now it's it's still a baby.
I like
We're
that.
still kind of nurturing it.
To get back to it, I loved the peanut butter and jelly. The peanut butter and jelly. I loved there was the chocolate chip and saltine was also unbelievable.
That's one of our favorites.
Yeah.
That's my favorite personally.
Yeah, just working fun stuff in there, right? Like when I saw you do the one with it was malted with the potato sticks in there.
Oh, the frosty fries. Yeah, we were like, you go to Wendy's, you get the frosty and then dip the French fries in it. And I was like, how can I make a cookie taste like that?
Yep.
And it took a little work. That one took a little work. Yeah, we worked with some different flour combinations.
Sure.
Finding the right potato product to use. But that one, that one will probably be back soon. We haven't made it in a little while.
I love it. Yeah. That's so. How about this? I've been talking about how to do this in the podcast for a while, about like a way to incorporate the listening and watching audience into some of what we do here. So why don't, if you are a fan of Dope Munchie Crew and the cookies that they made, why don't you send us a list of your favorite ones, a couple ideas you have for some new ones. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe one goes out. Maybe not.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you, man. Like, talking about the closing of a business is hard, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot that's personal about that. So, like, sharing that with me is, I appreciate you opening up like that. That's great.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Cookies.
Yeah.
Where are? I know you're at Abundance.
Yeah, so we're focused mostly on wholesale, just getting the product out there to other businesses to sell for us. Abundance Co-op, Lori's Natural Food, the Magnet, which is a nice little fried chicken shack in Penfield, right by our, right down the street from my house. Check them out. They're making really good chicken there. Lux Lounge, one of my favorite places. Just kind of happened to stumble into, and they're like, we need something behind the bar. Okay. Obviously Swiftwater, anytime. The cookies are always behind the bar.
Yep.
But if you go to our website too, Dope Munchie Crew, we got a list of all the dope spots.
Sick.
That you can get the cookies at.
The dope spots, man. Yeah. Love it. DopeMunchieCrew.com, Dope Munchie Crew cookies. Go see Dave, man. Tell him how much you love his cookies. Tell him how much you love his food. And say hi to the guys at Swiftwater. Have a couple of brews. Fill up a growler.
Get some food.
Support local business for sure. All around the board, man. Support local business. Awesome, man.
Amen.
Appreciate you, dude.
Thank you. Good to see you.
See you next time, man.